What's good? It's Woog. I just wanted to take a moment and recap the weekend's action, and there were two main events taking place. Those were Derek Chisora versus Kubrat Pulev 2, and Mark Magsayo defending his newly won WBC Featherweight title against Rey Vargas, the former WBC champ, down at 122. So I'm going to start off with Derek Chisora versus Pulev 2. That fight took place earlier in the day, or it took place first, taking place in the UK. And this was a fight where Derek Chisora really needed to pick up a win. And I thought that Kubrat Pulev, as he did in their first fight, was going to win a close but somewhat clear decision win. Or even if it wasn't a clear decision win, I thought he would be the one, because of his style, to ultimately get a little more love on the judges' scorecards. Well, in this fight, it ended up being a split decision awarded to Derek Chisora. And, you know, Derek Chisora has often been on the short end of a lot of these close fights. Controversially lost a fight several years ago against Robert Helenius via split decision. And then even recently, you know, the first of the two fights versus Joseph Parker, many thought that Derek Chisora deserved to win that one, and he lost that one via close decision. But in this fight, you basically saw everything that made a Derek Chisora fight such an attraction. I mean, you want to talk about blood and guts. It's a situation where you see Pulev is, you know, the more technical boxer. I mean, if you look at his amateur pedigree and so forth, he is a very skilled boxer, and he's only lost twice in his career up to this point, up to the point of Chisora versus Pulev 2, and those losses were against Vladimir Klitschko and Anthony Joshua, two world champions, right? So in Derek Chisora fights, we pretty much know what we're going to get. We know we're going to get Derek Chisora coming forward, throwing hellacious punches, sometimes smothering his own punches, and I think that that's worked against him in some of these judges' scorecards over the years. But Derek Chisora was coming forward, but one thing that I feel was under discussed with Derek Chisora, especially in this last fight, is the amount of upper body movement that was taking place. Almost Joe Frazier-like, where he's ducking, he's moving, and he's constantly doing this. Even when he's not collapsing the pocket, he's sitting back, but still doing enough of this to where Kubrat Pulev's probe hand isn't always making contact. Like, he wasn't getting the jab going as much as you thought that Kubrat Pulev might, because of that movement from Chisora. Now, Chisora's legs are clearly 38 years old. Like, when Derek Chisora takes a big shot and misses, you see how off balance he is, right? And you wonder how that would work against like a Deontay Wilder. That's the fight that he's calling for next after this decision win. Many people want him to retire on this very good note and figure that it's only going to get worse for him in there as he gets closer to 40 years old and perhaps beyond. But he wants another payday or two, and he's imploring Eddie Hearn to pay him more. That's what he was calling out for, you know, in the post-fight in-ring interview. And he's asking for the Bronze Bomber. I don't think that that would go well for him. But if we look at this fight, you see the upper body movement, and then you juxtapose that with the lack of leg movement, right? So his legs, to me, are clearly 38 years old, but his upper body, like even in the 10th, 11th, and 12th rounds, he was moving extremely well. Now, in like the 8th or 9th round, he got hurt super badly to where the way that he stumbled back into the ropes looked like it might have been the beginning of the end. There were a few different points where, because of Chisora's body language and the way that he would just kind of stagger backwards into the ropes, like he did several times in the rematch against Joseph Parker, I thought, oh boy, here we go. But Derek Chisora would find the guts and the intestinal fortitude to push through like he has in so many occasions in the past. And then before you know it, he's going right back to the body, which was a key ingredient in the recipe that earned him this close decision win. He was relentless to the body. He was throwing like both hands to the body. Sometimes he would sit back, just wait for an opportunity to explode with two hands to the body. So between that relentless body attack, which was having much more of a visible impact on Kubrat Pulev than it did in their first fight back in 2016, he would couple that body work with throwing that looping right hand over the top, which was often splashing up against the face of Kubrat Pulev. You know, both of his eyes were cut by the end of this. He had one cut over one eye, and then he had one of those kind of vertical-ish cuts over the other eyebrow, closer to the center of the head. And so you saw Derek Chisora kind of fighting at a little bit more of a measured pace than he did against, say, Joseph Parker in their first fight. In Parker versus Chisora 1, Chisora was like a bat out of hell all 12 rounds. And yes, he does slow down often before you even get to the midway point of the fight, to where he's looking kind of sloppy sometimes by like the 4th and 5th round. But Joseph Parker had a hell of a time trying to keep Derek Chisora off of him. In this case, it was Derek Chisora committing to the body attack versus Pulev, which you saw the sides start to really redden up, and you saw Kubrat Pulev put Chisora in so many different headlocks, and there were so many different clinches and tie-ups. Pulev was not having a good time in there. Neither was Derek Chisora. You see the way that Derek Chisora walks back to his corner between rounds, kind of plops on the seat, and just the look in his eyes where, I mean, he looks like he is willing to risk it all in there. Like, he's built pretty differently in that regard, right? And we've seen that over the years, and that is, again, made him such a beloved boxing figure, especially out in the UK. Everybody could pretty much appreciate what Derek Chisora gives to the sport, right? So Derek Chisora is throwing this two-handed body attack. Kubrat Pulev is working from the outside, but then is looking for these different opportunities as Derek Chisora does come in. So like the punch that really had Derek Chisora on skis was a right-hand uppercut, well-timed by Kubrat Pulev, catching Derek Chisora coming in. So Pulev was actually getting his right hand going and was getting some left hooks going, really kind of mixing up the attack, and was landing pretty cleanly on Derek Chisora. But Derek Chisora was, again, just putting in so much work to the body and then landing so flush with so many of those overhand right hands. Like, it was drawing such a huge crowd reaction. Obviously, they were fighting in the UK O2 Arena, so the crowd was a very pro-Chisora crowd. I wonder if that might have played a little bit into the judges' hands or minds subconsciously. But every time you would see Derek Chisora splash up top, it would get this raucous reaction from the crowd. And yeah, so this ended up being a candidate for Fight of the Year. This was an all-action fight. Yes, it was between a 41-year-old and a 38-year-old, but both of these guys pretty much gave it all they had. And this fight really could have gone either way. It could have been 115 one way, 115 the other way. It could have been a draw. Seriously, I thought that a draw was definitely in play, especially once they started reading the scorecards, and I knew that this was either going to be like a split or majority decision. What I haven't yet learned, and I'm still looking for the official scorecards. I saw, Boxing Scene had it like 115, 113. Chisora, I think Tony Bellew unofficially on DAZN had it a draw. But there was one judge's scorecard that had it 116 to 114. I'm still just not sure how you arrive at that in a 12-round fight, unless you had like maybe multiple 10-10 draw rounds. That's really the only way I could think of getting to 116, 114, because usually if it's 116, it's going to be 116, 112, and if it's 114, then it's going to be 114, 114. But yeah, I wasn't quite sure about that. But yeah, very close decision, went in Derek Chisora's favor. I felt so happy. You saw the relief in him and just the satisfaction that finally he was blessed with a close decision win. So to see how overjoyed he was, you couldn't help but feel good for the guy, especially, coming off of a 3-fight losing streak. He had won a few fights before that, but then lost a couple fights before that. You look at his record, he's got more than 10 losses. So he's definitely had a lot of difficulty fighting the elite and near elite fighters. Well, this was one case where, yes, you are getting a 41-year-old Kubrat Pulev, who is coming off of a pretty impressive win against Jerry Forrest, who's fought draws against Michael Hunter and against Zhang Jie Li. So Kubrat Pulev, yes, an older fighter, but is still a very good fighter who you pretty much have to be elite or near elite to beat up until this point, right? Again, only those 2 losses against Joshua and Klitschko. But yeah, Derek Chisora was awarded a decision win here. And again, I wouldn't be mad at a retirement. If he were to take another fight, I don't know if I'd want to see him fight Deontay Wilder. I think that would be a big payday for both guys. And maybe for Deontay Wilder, if he is going to return to the ring, maybe Derek Chisora would be somebody who he could get out of there and wouldn't have to have a blood and, who knows? Because just when you say that, you're drug into a 12-round slugfest with the guy, right? So who knows how that fight would play out. I tend to think that Deontay Wilder would be able to sharpshoot him, especially, again, given the 38-year-old legs of Derek Chisora, because it's a tale of two bodies, right? Again, you've got the upper body that's able to move like this throughout the whole fight, able to just do a lot of things to make a lot of the punches, basically reduce the percentage that the guy's connecting with you. But then you see the legs, and that's why Derek Chisora keeps on just kind of walking back into the ropes, so he could just kind of lean against the ropes. It's a little bit of an energy preserver for your legs, and he needs that. And you see when he's in the middle of the ring that he often has a lot of problems getting in and out of the pocket. Not that he's often trying to get out of the pocket. Usually once he's in the pocket, he's trying to stay there, and then that's where you usually see the tie-ups and so forth. But yeah, Derek Chisora came through with a decision win over Kubrat Pulev, and now let's get into Mark Magsayo's title defense against Rey Vargas, where I thought that Vargas was going to win a close decision win, and he in fact did win a close decision win. I thought it might be a unanimous decision win. This one ended up being a split decision win. Mark Magsayo actually dropped Rey Vargas, I believe, in the 8th round, but Rey Vargas was, to me, demonstratively winning a few of these rounds. And yes, there were a few swing rounds as well, and yes, there were rounds where Rey Vargas probably won the round, but still took a few hard shots from the very hard-hitting Mark Magsayo. You know, going into this, I didn't see Mark Magsayo as being like a finished product, technically. And I thought that as athletic as he was with his punches, pretty quick puncher, definitely a hard puncher, I felt like there was something about his rhythm that was pretty predictable, and that his attack was... Maybe basic sounds a little bit too pejorative a term, but I feel like the timing gets easier to peg as the fight goes on. Like, once you've seen a few rounds of the guy, he's not going to then wow you by switching up the tempo and doing something noticeably different. It's like he's a little bit one note, and not one note in his punch output. Sometimes he'll punch more than other times, but just it's almost like the conditions have to be right for him to throw like a 1-2 or to throw a straight right hand lead, which he did catch Vargas with a few of those. But Vargas just throws an array of punches. He mixes up the attack, he mixes up the tempo, he moves, and he's not one note. He's very, okay, for 30 seconds I'm going to do a little bit of this, and then I'm going to sit down on my punches and throw like a 4-punch combination where I throw maybe like 2 or 3 left hooks in a row. He wasn't doing so much of the 2 to 3 left hooks in a row against Magsayo for obvious reasons. Magsayo is the hardest puncher, besides maybe Azat Hovhannissian, who hurt Rey Vargas as well. And like in this fight against Magsayo, Rey Vargas had to kind of dig deep to work his way out of a dangerous situation where I'm convinced Rey Vargas has a good chin, and he's a very good survivor even when he is hurt. Because I thought, oh man, he's in trouble. You saw him tying up. You saw even when they would break up off the tie, no, he wasn't totally staggering. But if you've seen Rey Vargas move enough, you knew that, oh, he's kind of compromised here. His legs aren't totally back yet. And you wondered when the next one of those big right hands from Magsayo was going to land and then put him into even more trouble. But he did work his way out of those dangerous situations. And again, he would get right back onto, jabbing to like the mid-chest, solar plexus area, and then throwing like a left hook to the body, then going with a kind of a right uppercut to the body. He was really committed to Mark Magsayo's body, and I felt like that had to be a part of Rey Vargas's recipe here. So you saw that the body attack kind of stunted Magsayo's pursuit a bit. You saw him sitting on the outside just a little bit more, and a little bit, just kind of taking a step back when he would get, pressed, for instance, with a jab to the belly area. You would see him then have to kind of reset and then re-engage and think about how he's going to get back in there. But as he's thinking about how to get back in there, Rey Vargas is good enough on distance management where he knows when he's out of range for getting hit by Magsayo, but still in range to be able to touch Magsayo, because he had a much longer reach than Magsayo. He was a couple inches taller, rather like 4 inches taller, significant height advantage. And so when he was like jabbing to the body and Mark Magsayo was thinking about how to engage and, kind of, sitting back and looking for the right time or opportunity, Rey Vargas is kind of a step and a half back, out of range for Magsayo, but in range again to land some shots of his own. So I thought that Rey Vargas navigated that space very effectively. And going into this fight, you thought that that was going to be a big key advantage that Rey Vargas would look to exploit. So now in beating Mark Magsayo via close decision, he has now become he being Rey Vargas, is now a 2-division champion. Again, he was a longtime WBC belt holder at 122. Now he's the WBC champion at 126. So you wonder what's next. I mean, he wants Leo Santa Cruz, who I believe still has like a super title distinction at 126, even if he has campaigned there very sporadically and very rarely in recent years. Santa Cruz hasn't been very busy at featherweight in recent years. But I think that he's actually still the WBA super champion. Lee Wood is the lesser champion, but the WBA belt holder who defended it successfully against Michael Conlon in what I see to be as currently still the fight of the year 2022. But Lee Wood fights on DAZN, so I don't see that being made in short order. Josh Warrington also fights on DAZN. He's the current IBF belt holder, even though he never rectified or settled the score against the very dangerous Mauricio Lara. I can't wait to see him again. But Josh Warrington, the IBF belt holder, just won that off of Kiko Martinez, who won it against Kid Galahad in like a vacant title bout. No, Kid Galahad, I believe, won it in a vacant title bout against Jonza Dickens and then got knocked out by Kiko Martinez. Then Kiko Martinez got stopped by Josh Warrington, making Warrington the 2-time IBF belt holder, because he had also beaten Lee Selby for the belt a few years ago. That was the initial rise of Josh Warrington, where he then defended against Carl Frampton, Kid Galahad. Yeah, so Josh Warrington, 2-time IBF belt holder, but again, he's on DAZN. And then you've got Emmanuel Navarrete, who fights with Top Rank on ESPN, WBO belt holder. So on that side, you've got like Navarrete, you've got Joet Gonzalez, who's about to fight against Isaac Dogbe. All of them are on the ESPN Top Rank side, at least right now. So on the Rey Vargas, Mark Magsayo side, they're on PBC. So the WBC belt holder has been with PBC because it was Gary Russell Jr. before it was Magsayo. So Gary Russell Jr. still in the mix whenever he gets back into action after losing the title. And, he's been injured and suffering a lot of family tragedy. We'll keep our eye on the Gary Russell Jr. career and see where that stands. But he's on PBC, so, he could conceivably fight against Rey Vargas for the title. I'd imagine he'd come in and beat somebody first before getting a title shot just after, losing the title. But then you've got, Leo Santa Cruz, who fights with PBC. But then you have on the undercard of this Mark Magsayo versus Rey Vargas fight, you had Brandon Figueroa making his 126-pound debut. He was a former belt holder at 122, lost the title in a great fight, great close, disputed fight against Stephen Fulton. And so Brandon Figueroa just went up to 126 and stopped Carlos Castro on the undercard. So maybe Brandon Figueroa is next in line for that WBC title shot against Rey Vargas. But yeah, there are a few guys I would love to see Rey Vargas fight. I mean, to be honest, if I could just, hypothetically matchmake, yes, I would love to see Rey Vargas against Emmanuel Navarrete. Again, that would require PBC and Top Rank collaborating on a 126-pound fight. Don't necessarily see that going down for, boxing, political, and economic reasons. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Rey Vargas' title reign looks like. He's still undefeated. So yeah, his resume just took a big level up with this win over the previously undefeated Mark Magsayo. And then again, on the undercard, we got Brandon Figueroa beating and stopping Carlos Castro. And then further on the undercard, we had the Derrick James trained Frank Martin stopping Jackson Marinez. That's the same Jackson Marinez who many believe, including myself, believe that he beat Raleigh Romero and was kind of robbed, and then he got stopped by Richard Comey. Well, this was Jackson Marinez's return to the ring, first fight since getting stopped by Richard Comey, and he got stopped by the rising prospect Frank Martin. So keep your eye on Frank Martin. Tough breaks for Jackson Marinez. But yeah, let me know what you thought about the weekend's action. What do you think about Rey Vargas now as 2-division champion? And do you think that, kind of given the turnover in some of these belts and some of the rising names like Navarrete? Is there any chance that we get some cross-promotional title unification fights? I mean, Lee Wood just had a sensational fight against Michael Conlan. What can they do to bring some of these belts together? I know that on the DAZN side, they can conceivably make Lee Wood versus Josh Warrington, where you then have a WBA IBF unification fight. But beyond that, I don't see a lot of unification going down. But I do see in each one of those respective lanes enough fighters to make for some very interesting and exciting fights. But yeah, let me know what you think about the state of the featherweight division, and let me know your thoughts on Derek Chisora versus Kubrat Pulev 2. Also, Robeisy Ramirez is another featherweight to keep your eye on. He's also on top rank, so he could conceivably fight against Joet Gonzalez, Emmanuel Navarrete, Isaac Dogbe, and so forth. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, and please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.